I know I've titled this video that solar is stupid, but of course it does depend on why you are thinking of doing solar. So let's talk about the situation we're in. We are not off-grid. We do have power. Therefore, it's not essential that we have off-grid power. We simply want it as backup for when we lose power at inconvenient times. Last year, Hurricane Helene had us without power for a week and a half. First 2 or 3 days were no problem. After a week, it was getting to be a bit of a problem. So we don't want that to happen again, and we're in a fortunate position where we can afford to fix it. So solar was our choice. We're in an area where we do not have much wind, but we do have beautiful sunshine. Midwinter, freezing cold, blue sky, almost as always. We do not have cloudy days in northeast Tennessee, on this side of the mountains anyway. Beautiful spot, full sun, south-facing house, slightly angled portions of the house that allow me to work with solar panels, I thought. So I decided to take a look at solar. 3 years ago, I talked to a bunch of solar companies, got frustrated, realized that they were only interested in selling me a loan. They were not interested in selling me a solar system. You can realize that when every conversation is about what you're currently spending on your power bill and whether in fact you can afford to take their loan without them giving you the pricing on any of the technology that you need. They will not size it. They only want to discuss your existing monthly cost, which drove me a little nuts. I did eventually find a company that would discuss the mathematics, but it was trivial and it was clearly avoiding certain topics. I would ask questions multiple times and it would be avoided every time. So 3 years ago, I decided that solar was not going to work for us. I could not get sufficient information. And the information I did get made me realize that it was not going to work, and the payback was going to be something like 15 years, which I'm not okay with. We started on a series of power reduction projects. The first one was to put the hot water heater in the furnace. We have an awful lot of wood, and therefore a wood furnace seemed to make sense. It halved our electric bill immediately in the wintertime. So for the 4 months that are bad for us in this part of the country, it halved our electric requirement. We went down from a bill of close to 300 to a bill of 150. I then put a cold water loop in to help with the power consumption during the summertime. Not as effective, but did work. 2 heat exchangers, one at this end of the house connected to that HVAC system, and another heat exchanger at this end of the house to work with that HVAC system. I need to do things differently this spring, but that's not in front of me right now. I'm going to have to put another heat exchanger in for the cold loop, which is different to the hot loop, because the hot loop's on the pressure side. I want the cold loop to be on the return air side. It'll work a lot better that way for the AC. I can explain that in a further video. But the story starts where 3 years later, after deciding that solar was stupid, I then started looking at the mathematics again, and there's a reason for that. So let me go take a look and show you. Now this year, looking at solar again, started with a phone call from my son saying, hey Dad. And quite often those phone calls don't end quite so well, but this one did. And I managed to snag 3 cabinets and 32 ginormous brand new batteries. So these are Deca HR3500s. I actually have 12 in each cabinet just for storage. A circuit breaker as well in the panel, and plenty of room for additional electronics. So 3 wonderful cabinets, 32 batteries for free. Got me all excited, made me realize that my payback math that prevented me from doing solar before was now halved, because everybody tells you that the cost is all in the batteries, which is kind of partly true, but not really. So let's go through this math real quick and show you how I have quickly concluded that solar really is stupid. Even if you get all of your batteries for free, it's still stupid. And let me tell you why I have concluded that. So the math starts with you having to figure out exactly what is your power requirement for your house. That's where the conversations with the power company realize that they too are hiding information and not particularly helpful. But I did manage to get a hold of an engineer and got some good conversation eventually. But that was the third phone call and the fourth person to talk to. So at first they said, oh, no problem at all, get your power bill out, take a look at your kilowatt hour usage, which we did. We tried to identify what our peak month was, back calculated our ampage requirements. Voltage, of course, is fixed at 240 coming into the house, so it's all about amps. It's not about kilowatts or kilowatt hours. But you can start anywhere with your mathematics. Looking at the kilowatt hours that we required and back calculating, it looked like we had a total house max peak consumption of 18 amps, which I told the power company was a little foolish. And there's just no way that was true, because we can't run our entire house off 18 amps. And even in steady state, although all of the power requirement is at startup, we still had 3.5 freezers, full-size, very large freezers. We have 200-gallon water heaters. We have 2 3-ton HVAC systems, each having a 10 kilowatt emergency heat element. And then, of course, the regular computers and TVs and stuff around the house. So 18 amps just was not useful to me. The excuse they used was, well, the 18 amps is based on a monthly average, so it's not your startup current, which is entirely true. But our average consumption still, I didn't believe it, 18. So I got a hold of engineering, tried to get a hold of the real data around our actual draw. They were more useful. They looked at different information that they had, and they told me that my max current draw in the last year is in fact in summertime, which is what I knew, and was 25 amps. I asked them, are they sure? They said, yes, they're sure. I figured that 25 amps was still kind of ridiculous. But I believed them and decided to start doing my math around a 30 amp requirement. I also double checked the transformer we have here. This is a 15, and 15s have a max of 61 amps before they overload, and they alert the power company at 80% of that. So I knew, and they had never had an alert from this transformer, so I knew that our peak ampage has not exceeded 40 in the last 7 years since we've lived here. So I had 2 good points to work from. They told me 25. I ran that up to 30. I know the transformer would alert them at 40. I know I'd never exceeded 40. So I started to do my math based on 35, because this is what engineers do, which is twice the original requirement that the first person I spoke to gave me, which was 18. So that's the first word of caution, is to make sure that you use the right number, because there are 2 things that your solar panel does. It is not only providing the juice you need to operate your house, it's also recharging your batteries, because when the sun is not out, you draw current from your batteries. You have to then recharge those batteries for when the sun is not out again, which could be the very next day. So you then have to start digging into the mathematics around the batteries. The batteries are for a different application, so it was very difficult to get real information And again, 3 phone calls, 3 different engineers, finally found the right person that would actually help me. So I could get out of these batteries the 35 amps that I needed out of sets of 4, working with 48 volts in total. A lot of batteries that you buy for solar are 48 volt batteries, and it keeps the math for inverters, etc., easier when you're talking about blocks of 48 volts. So working with the battery manufacturer, I realized that these batteries would give me 2 hours of use of the draw that I was requiring per set of 4. I had 32. I can do the math, and it turns out that I can get 35 amps out of these batteries. You have to then do the math of your longest night. And sure, summertime, where our biggest draw is, does not align with our longest night. So you have to pick your poison, but the longest night is going to be 14 hours. The sun goes down around here at 5. The sun is useless on solar panels as early as 4, and the sun does not start to come up till 6 a.m. and is truly not even useful now at 9 a.m. So should you use 14 hours? I decided to use 16 hours for my mathematics. The 32 batteries I had at 35 amps will provide 16 hours of current draw. So that was great. That was a small celebration that the battery side of the equation was done. I then started talking about the charging requirements for those batteries. They have a minimum charge ampage of 4.8 amps, a max of 90. So it does depend on how quickly you want to charge the batteries. Don't go close to 90, else you can blow them up. But don't think you can recharge at 5 in a day. So after a 16-hour night, well, guess what? You've got 8 hours to recharge these batteries before potentially you've got another 16-hour night. So you then do the math of, well, what ampage do I need to recharge these batteries and get them recharged in 8 hours, assuming that we have perfect sun, which of course we can also never do. So the charge rate I had to provide was 80 amps to charge them in 8 hours, ignoring for the moment the math that is very important around sun productivity, effectively, from a current perspective. So 80 amps every day for charging the battery bank, 30 amps for using the house gave me a 120 amp requirement from my solar panels. Well, okay then, let's start doing that math. It turns out I need 60 of the very best solar panels. Each side of our roof, well, the south-facing side is the only side we could use, but each side of our roof is only 1,400 square feet. So the one side facing south and very slightly southwest would only give me 1,000 square feet of roof area, which would be completely consumed with the 960 square feet that I needed of solar panels, plus some. So the wiggle room was not there, and I would actually have to have a few very ineffective solar panels on the other part of the roof as well. But I then did the cost mathematics, realized the house would look ridiculous, realized it was a lot of work to put that many panels on the roof. Decided to do the math on the cost. $14,000 in solar panels. Everyone tells you they're cheaper now and everything's good. $14,000 in solar panels. Inverters were the next part of the mathematics, and I did not conclude that math because I realized I was being stupid and solar was stupid before I got that far. But inverters, I would require 3, maybe 2 of the big ones, but I was talking between $5,000 and $6,000 for inverters. Could even be as high as $7,000. So I was talking $14,000 plus 6. We're talking $20,000, not including all of the effort of putting solar panels on the roof, building a shed to house the power units and the battery banks and the inverters and the charge circuitry and everything. So we're 21,000, not including cabinets, batteries, and buildings. And our electric consumption is only $115. So the payback is still stupid, even when your batteries are free. I then revisited, why am I doing this thing? Because maybe there's a different way to do it. And the only reason that I'm doing this is because we sometimes lose power. I'm not interested in spending 20,000 bucks, even with half the system for free, to save $100 on my electric bill, right? I'm not interested in a 200-month payback. I don't think in decades, I think in years. And if something doesn't pay itself back in a year or two at the most, I'm not interested. So when it comes to decades for payback, I can't be bothered. It's worth bringing the conversation quickly to a conclusion and to talk about the use case again, in that we are not off-grid. I started the video by saying that we don't have to have solar or wind, or wave. Therefore, we're not forced to spend the $20,000 and the probably months worth of work to install everything and get it all working. A month, of course, because I do everything myself. And if I had a crew doing it, sure, we could do it in a week. But we do not need to have that kind of investment to solve the problem that we have, which is we lose power every now and again. I spoke to my wife, I persuaded her, went through all the math, and we have purchased a military 803A 10 kilowatt generator that is rated and is tested at 14 kilowatts, that provides me way more than the 35 amps I would ever need. It'll quite happily provide 50 amps. It'll provide more than that, but it'll happily provide 50 amps at 75% power, 365, 24 hours a day. It's a military spec, very robust generator that cost me a whopping $6,000. So I'm going to put my generator panel into the house, go get my diesel generator. It has a power consumption at full power usage of 1.3 gallons, according to some flaky statistics that I don't quite believe. It's got a 20% power consumption of about a third of a gallon. So at a third of a gallon, for 10 hours, I'm really not bothered by the cost of the diesel if we have an emergency again. I want to use a diesel generator. I do not want to use a gas generator. We always have diesel on hand. As you can tell, I have a lot of diesel equipment, and we always have a couple of 100 gallons of diesel. So I have two gas-powered generators. One's a 3 kilowatt, one's a 10 kilowatt. The 10 kilowatt struggles to provide 20 amps. Hence buying the new larger diesel. It is again rated at 10, but it's a true 13 or 14, and it's military grade, and the math does not lie. The Home Depot style 10 kilowatt generator that I have will blow up after a month or two of use, if we ever had to use it that long. It's in bad state already, and I've only owned it for 2 years, and it struggles to provide 20 amps. So diesel generator is the answer, and solar payback and financials and mathematics in terms of your true requirements are absolutely stupid. Now, just to conclude the conclusion, that is all when you start using the system. Don't forget, in the math, the panels degrade at between 1 and 2% a year. They have things fall on them, they have snow on them, they have ice on them, they break. Batteries have a certain number of recharge cycles. It turns out that after you've spent what would have been $45,000, I would be replacing the batteries after about 4 years, probably replacing a few of them way before that, because you do get death of a few even in the first year or two. And then I'd be replacing the solar panels continuously, probably not in the first 4 years, but we're talking about a 5-year replacement budget that you have to put to one side of about another $10,000. So, solar is stupid. Diesel generators are wonderful. That's the answer.